I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. This is the first inaugural meeting, so we really don't have a structure set. But so I thought, should we take roll or just introduce ourselves? What's the pleasure of the steering committee members?
I'd say both.
Okay. So how about if we have Tony take roll? Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for this. I hope I know
Since-
everybody's name.
It's easy.
I'm Andy.
Okay, we'll start
Czar.
with Vicki Urbanik.
Here.
Introduce yourself.
We'll do that.
Councilperson Bozak,
Present?
Councilperson Rivas,
I'm here.
we got Commissioner Blaney here, and County Attorney McClure.
Present.
Okay, very good.
5 present.
So all present, and for those who don't know, the 3 voting members are the 2 council members and the commissioner, and then the 2 non-voting members are the county attorney and myself. So Commissioner Blaney suggested that we do some introductions. So how about if we start at that and maybe just say your name, who you represent, and why you're thrilled to be here.
My name's Andy Bozak. I'm on the county council. I represent, I'm an at-large member, so I represent the whole county. Thrilled to be here because I get to work with Miss Vicki. I mean, it's a great opportunity to move this money, this spend forward. I'm very excited to be part of it, so thank you guys for having me.
I'm Jeremy Rivas. I represent a district, the 2nd District, Portage Township mostly, on the county council, also the president of the county council. So I'm just excited to maybe help some great organizations, nonprofits out there with the art money and get this thing moving forward and get some money out there in the community.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I'm Vicki Urbanik, Porter County Auditor, and I am the non-voting chair of the steering committee.
Laura Blaney, I'm a Porter County Commissioner in the South District, but we're voted on at large, so we represent everyone. We put a lot of time and effort into this process and making it fair and including public input, so I'm really looking forward to getting started.
Attorney Scott McClure, the county attorney, here to help with compliance.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a few items on the agenda just to do some sort of house cleaning, and the first item is the status of the current projects. Now, I really don't have a PowerPoint presentation prepared, but I did throw some slides together for reference. And if we're going to talk about the current projects, let's go to the first slide. This is taken from a slide that I had at my prior presentation. Some of you, I know in the audience, have been at the prior presentations, and this is a very condensed timeline of what got us here in the past year. And tomorrow is a momentous day in our country because it is the 1-year anniversary of the signing of the American Rescue Plan Act into law. And then to just go through the timeline, we've received our first tranche of the $33 million allocation that's coming to the county government in May. And the screenshot shows our fund ledger that shows the $16+ million. There's been a variety of training sessions held throughout the past year. On January 6th, U.S. Treasury issued the final rule, which you can find links for on the county website, on the auditor's website. You can also go to treasury.gov and you can get a link to the final rule. And then the last screenshot is what happened on February 22nd, which actually led to why we're here today, the formation of the various committees. So now, if you could go, Tony, to the not the next slide, but the next over. This is a status of our current projects. On February 22nd, the county commissioners approved a plan that established 4 projects, and then that same night, the county council approved the required appropriations. And so the 4 projects are listed here. and the expenditure category. What that means is that is the expenditure category that we in the auditor's office will be assigning to the projects when we have to report the spending to U.S. Treasury. The next column shows the amount that was appropriated, and then the fourth column shows what has actually been spended today. So as you can see, the only project that has been paid for so far is premium pay. Premium pay was awarded to our certain county employees in the public safety and public health sectors. Not all county employees received premium pay. And the amount that came to $877,437.
Vicki,
Why?
is that,
Yes.
that's done? We're not expending more out of that?
Unless there is a change, no, we are done with one exception.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
There
apologize.
is, no, that's fine. There is an employee who is actually on military leave, and so we will have to hold that when the individual returns. But other than that, all of the designated employees that were on the council-approved list were paid this amount. And so why is there a difference between appropriation and expended? Basically, when we put together the estimates, we estimated high, just to be on the safe side. We didn't want the council to appropriate less in case we were missing anybody, because then we would have to come back to the council for it. We knew it would be on the high side.
So we'll have 100,000 pretty much coming back to us
Yes.
into the ARPA spend for this?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if the council would agree, you could unappropriate that balance and then return it to
Great news.
the rest of the
And
appropriation.
I think that's one of the topics that this committee will discuss, because this probably won't be the only time this happens, and how do we handle that money so it doesn't get wasted.
Okay. Well, if any's left on the table, it does go back to Treasury.
Oh, we won't leave anything on the table.
Okay. Okay, very good. So that's the status of the current projects. And I think in order to add on to this list, that is going to be the steering committee's job, correct? Okay. Status of applications. March 8th was the deadline for citizens to apply to the various subcommittees. And for the Behavioral Health and Social Services, we had 16 applicants. For the Nonprofits and Employers Subcommittee, we had 13. For Infrastructure and Facilities, we had 6. And for County Government COVID Health Response, we had 2. This committee is not appointing those individuals, but the county commissioners will be meeting next Tuesday, and they are scheduled at least to appoint their citizen members to the subcommittees. And then the county council will be meeting on March 21st, and you will be appointing your citizen appointments. So that is the status of the applications. The steering committee, one of the tasks that the commissioners ask the steering committee to do is to confirm some of the non-voting advisors to the subcommittees. And I don't know, Commissioner Blaney, if you wanted to address that.
Sure.
These are the non-voting advisors.
Right. So for the county government COVID public health response, the health department has recommended that we appoint Connie Rudd. He's a longtime employee from the health department. And then,
How many does each committee get, non-voting members, are you doing?
it's not a set number.
Thank you.
Yep. And then for behavioral health and social services, we had,
Well,
the
there was a request, or a discussion at the commissioners' meeting to appoint someone from, like a nonprofit expert,
for behavioral
or
health.
was that on the
Yeah, it's
nonprofits
on.
one? I think
was-
those are still under discussion.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't talking about that
Oh,
one.
you were talking about someone from Porter Stark, I'm sorry.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. And then also, the trustees from the most populous townships. So that's Jesse Harper from Center Township and, Mr. Clancy from Portage Township.
Yes.
And, Mr. Biggs had mentioned getting one or two additional trustees from the rural areas. And he hasn't gotten back to me with those names yet. So, I can't confirm who that's gonna be at this time. And then the nonprofits, we're still looking. I know you've reached out to a couple people, but,
And then did the commissioners?
oh, and the infrastructure and facilities, we
Okay.
had Mike Novotny, our county engineer, and Bob Thompson, the head of the planning department. That's it, right?
Okay. Very good.
Yeah,
So we have a couple more that we need to get on board.
is Ray gonna still be on the infrastructure?
Yes, thank you.
Facilities?
And facilities.
Yeah.
I know I was forgetting somebody.
You have Novotny and Cloyd here, so
It'll be Novotny, oh, not Bob Thompson, it's
Okay,
Ray.
so-
Novotny and Cloyd.
Ray Cloyd.
Okay, so,
Sorry about
so far, the
So I just
non-voting.
managed to make this totally confusing.
No. So far, oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so far, the non-voting, oh, I'm sorry, that's what you were going to address, the HR director, right?
Mhm.
For the, go ahead.
No, just announce what you got there.
Okay, so also for the county government COVID health response, the non-voting technical advisor is the HR director, Rhonda Young.
Yes,
Okay,
and she's confirmed.
okay, great. So, the ones that have not yet been appointed, as Commissioner Blaney just mentioned, would be the Health Department representative of Connie Rudd. I think that's the only one that the commissioners
We have
didn't-
not approved her yet.
Okay.
Because I just got that name today, but we will on Tuesday.
Okay. So, in your mind, is the steering committee, should you take a vote to confirm these non-voting technical advisors that you would like to see appointed?
I think we should.
Okay.
So I'm gonna clear it up because it's just kind of a jumbled mess, the way we
Okay.
said it, the way I
Yes.
presented it, and I apologize. So for the COVID public health response, we have Rhonda Young, the county HR director,
Yes.
and Connie Rudd, longtime employee at the, in the health department. She's in charge of the nurses. So we could probably do these all together.
Sure.
And then we've got for the infrastructure and facilities, we have Ray Cloyd, our director of facilities, and Mike Novotny, our county engineer. And for the mental health and social issues, behavioral health and social issues, we have Jesse Harper, Brendan Clancy, and we will add to that list.
Right.
And did I forget someone from the list? Okay, and then our last one is the nonprofits and employers, and at this time, we are still working on it.
Right.
So I would make a motion to approve the names that we've mentioned, and,
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed. Okay. So the non-voting technical advisors have been officially appointed or supported?
them.
Yes, by the steering committee with some additional members to be added later. Now, without yes.
Will those members be chosen before the committees meet?
we hopefully,
Hopefully.
So the commissioners will do it at their meeting and then it'll come in front of the council, or we'll just do it at our next steering meeting?
no, I think
Well,
commissioners will appoint theirs, then.
well,
with-
these are just non-voting
are-
advisors
Yeah, they're
that
non-voting.
you put together, yeah.
So you can just say at your commissioners meeting who you choose and then they can go, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want to hold anything up, that's what I was asking.
Right.
exactly. Which brings us, which segues in nicely into the next agenda topic. which is really probably the meat and potatoes of today's meeting, the general planning and discussion of just how you and the subcommittees are going to be structured. We have a timeline that was set up. It was based on some of the discussions that were presented at the commissioners' meeting about how this process was going to work, whereby the subcommittees would review the various proposals and the citizen input. Subcommittees would make recommendations to the steering committee, and then the steering committee would fine-tune those recommendations and then present those recommendations to the county commissioners and then to the county council. Now, that's a really nice overview of what's going to happen, but there's lots of details to be worked out. So why don't we start talking about some of those details?
Well, in terms of the timeline, I would like to stay as close as we can to that timeline.
Okay.
I mean, I think the point has always been to try to get the money deployed sooner rather than later. So, I mean, if things get jumbled up in the middle of the process, we can always extend it, but I certainly don't want to start extending at the beginning. I think we stay tight to a timeline to begin with.
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay, so that timeline that has been discussed more specifically is April and May. The subcommittees are to meet, prioritize recommendations, and submit the recommendations to the steering committee. June, I'm sorry?
Do they already present them by the end of May? Or was June gonna be when they present? Just for clarity.
Does
Well,
it-
that's a good discussion topic,
says-
because submit recommendations to the steering committee. So when would you, the steering committee, want these recommendations? I don't think that has been firmed up. Nothing's been decided. This was based on those discussions
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
commissioners' meeting. So
When do we want,
when do they, let me go on with the rest of the timetable. June was compiling all the different reports. And as I can envision that, it would be putting together the various proposals in a package, if you will, for the steering committee, so that you can delve into those recommendations. And then July, the steering committee holds meetings to receive input on the recommendation and then prepares the proposed plan for the commissioners and council. And I have my own note with the expectation that the commissioners and council will approve in August. So, getting back to Commissioner Blaney's question, when, so
Yeah, I just
April
wanna
and
make
May,
sure that-
steering
I
committees?
think
that all makes sense.
the meat of the work is gonna happen in the subcommittees. I wanna just make sure they have enough time. If those proposals are due March 31st.
There's 2 months, April and
2
May.
months, yeah.
I mean, I think that's plenty of time. I mean, I would think in which, I guess we decide, or they could decide based upon the number of proposals. I mean, do they hold 2 meetings? Does each subcommittee hold 2 or 3? Maybe 2 where they take the presentations, and a third one where they maybe vote themselves to, recommend which ones to move back to us. I mean, so.
Well, not to interrupt, but
But
that's
you did.
another, yes. Well, that's another question. Should all subcommittees be structured the same way? Or are you suggesting to the subcommittees, run your meetings as you see fit? Hold as many meetings as you see fit?
I think it might depend on the number of proposals that are in front of them.
I think the number of meetings is gonna be up to them. I do think there should be some semblance of continuity between the meetings, so, but I'm not sure what that means, just that we have every committee has a chair, and we have the same rules for public engagement and, basically how the meeting gets handled.
Do we want to hammer that out now? How public input works and stuff
Yeah,
like
I
that?
think we should.
That's another good topic.
Oh, Vicky.
So, public comment. Are you in agreement that there should be public comment? I think it's been discussed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Okay, so how would you want to have public input? Just have people from the audience chime in as we go, or wait till the end of the meeting, which is pretty much the norm at public meetings?
I would think if I can, Madam Chairperson,
Yes.
I'm really excited to see you with that gavel in the middle there.
She's not afraid to use it.
Is, again, these subcommittees are created to hear proposals. We've had public input now for going on 5 months in terms of, meetings and, the website. Now, we have a deadline for proposals, official proposals requesting money. And then I think they go to the appropriate committee, they present, then after that presentation, and maybe back and forth from the subcommittee and the presenters, maybe then you open it up for public input on that specific proposal. I mean, does that make any, shouldn't they be, public input should be specific to the proposals now, right?
And that way they can ask questions of the people actually making the proposal, which I like that.
To me,
I mean, I
I
think just,
also, well, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I don't want to put people who are making proposals in a situation where they get cross-examined the way that elected officials might expect to get barraged with questions. We shouldn't necessarily put the public through that.
Yeah, but they should be able to defend the project too if they're gonna ask for
They
public money.
should from us, for us, I think.
I don't disagree.
I think questions should come up and everyone should be able to hear the public comments, but we're the ones that have to make the decision. And they might bring up things that make us question the proposals, but I don't think it should be public on public. What
Perhaps,
were you gonna say, Scott?
No, it's good.
perhaps it maybe get a hybrid of a thought that a subcommittee hears presentations from the requesters, whoever's proposing a project, and then hear all the presentations, or at least the ones scheduled for that day. Because what if they have 50 proposals? I don't think they're going to have 50 presentations in one meeting. Well, maybe they do.
I would hope not.
Maybe that's what they do. And then maybe at the end, hear comments on those specific proposals
to the subcommittee.
to the subcommittee, like pose
That's what
the
I-
questions to the subcommittee.
That's what I would.
That's a better idea. And that way, if we
That
have
way
a
they
question
can
for
also
someone out there,
say,
we can ask them direct, so, yeah.
They may want to just get up and say, well, I think these 4 projects should get funding, and then they maybe don't have to get into the weeds of what they don't like about a project.
Would you recommend to the subcommittees not to make any decisions until they hear all presentations, or to make decisions as they go along?
No, they have to hear them all.
I think they have to hear them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if they allow the public comments at that meeting, they're not making any recommendations until they're done.
Yeah, I think that would help
And so
them.
they can hear public comments, and then they can organize their thoughts.
Right,
around that.
that'll help them hearing the public comment, about whether people are for or against, or maybe what input they can add, positive or negative
Right.
to the proposal.
And say a person wanted to speak multiple times during a meeting, are they allowed to do that? Or if they're continuing to bring back the same thing, say there's 3 meetings, and they continue to say the same thing in every meeting, do they have an unlimited time to speak? And can they talk on the same subject multiple times? Or do we limit it? Do we even discuss that?
Should probably have a time limit. I mean, the board could always extend if necessary.
The chair.
Okay.
But I'm missing something. If somebody's gonna propose, they're gonna sit up in front of that subcommittee and make a proposal. I guess, from what we're saying, then the next one would come up. Maybe there's engagement back and forth when they're done, and they open it up to the public, maybe at the end of that meeting. What do you?
But what if the public, like say Jeremy's asking for money and I don't like it, so I speak against you at this meeting, and then I come to your next meeting, and you're not proposing again, but I want to speak against you again, because I just wanted to get it through that I really don't like you.
I would say it would have to be specific to something proposed that day. I see what you're
That's
saying.
what I'm asking, yeah.
But on that point, can a citizen who comments at a subcommittee come back to the steering committee and comment? Because it's like a separate committee, it's a separate.
I think people can comment as many times as they want.
Okay, that's fine, I'm just asking the question.
And even if it's not that proposal on that day, they might have heard it last time and then went home and thought about it and came back and have something meaningful to add. And who's gonna regulate?
That's what I'm asking, I don't know.
Okay. Now, we've been talking about the subcommittees. What about your meetings, the steering committee, public comment?
Same
Is it the
thing.
same?
I
Okay.
think so.
End of the meeting, we should have some time limits.
Okay, end of the meeting, time limits on per speaker, or like, now we're going to have, I'm just throwing this out, 15 minutes for public comment?
No,
Or
per
an hour for
speaker.
public,
Per
per speaker? Okay,
In my opinion.
You do a couple minutes, and I mean, people generally respect that. It's, the worst thing to do is to gavel somebody. It really is. They just, as long as both sides respect each other, you can say each person has 2 minutes, you know, if that's what you want. And yeah, I mean, when you get into 4 and 5 minutes, you just, oh, you know, you just want them to wrap it up so everybody has a fair chance. But yeah, I would say a couple minutes, 2, 3, 4, I don't,
At least 3.
3 minutes.
3?
I think they should identify themselves, so I'll make sure, no, we don't need to know the address maybe, I don't know the address, but that they live in the county.
Okay.
If they don't, I mean, they can still speak, I assume, but I'm just saying, I would like to know that the person that we're listening to lives or
Okay.
doesn't live in the county.
Now, I recently gave the public presentations, and it was not a meeting, it was more of a presentation from me to whoever wanted to come. And so during the conversation, we had people asking questions, because that was the nature of those presentations. We didn't ask people to identify themselves or to give an address. And that was only because, like I said, it was intended to be an informal type of a information exchange. But what you're saying, Councilmember Bozick, is that you would like the audience members who speak to identify their names. This is an official meeting. Identify their names and like their general residence, like
Yeah, I think so,
Valparaiso.
Valparaiso.
Morgan
I mean, and I think the
Township.
paper needs that too, when they're writing up articles on who spoke, you know,
Okay.
in my opinion, I don't know.
Okay, very good. Are, everyone's in agreement with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, what else about public comment at the end of each meeting? We allow public comment, and so you'll be recommending that to the subcommittees as well? Okay. Okay. Now, okay, we've got public comment figured out, I believe. What about, let's go back to, I think we left some other issues on the table here when we were talking about the timetable. Did you want to adopt the time? Okay, we were talking about, when do you want these recommendations from the subcommittees?
I thought we went over
We're
that.
targeting the end of May, that subcommittees will wrap up their recommendations. So will you be meeting, are you planning to meet on a regular basis, or just wait till the subcommittees are done with their work? I mean,
Not
we're
sure.
March 10th.
The work is in the subcommittees, really.
At
I'm not
this
sure
point.
what we're gonna be talking about while they're doing their work.
I would say if we need to meet because some issue comes up that we need to
Okay.
solve, schedule something.
So the meat of what is going to be happening, target dates of April and May, subcommittees. The goal is for them to prepare their recommendations to present to you by the end of May. And then the steering committee will start actively meeting, potentially in June and July. Okay. And then at that point, will the steering committee decide how often you'll be meeting? Depending on. what
Yeah, how
you
many
need
we
to
have,
do.
yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Because
very
we could have a
good.
lot of public input then too, so. A lot of meetings.
There was some discussion earlier about you giving the subcommittee some, I think Commissioner Blaney, you mentioned it at a meeting, guardrails or just some general considerations as to what projects you'd like to see. Not the specific type of projects, but what is going to be given
yeah, we were
some
talking about,
priority
yeah.
Considerations. For example, I think it's a no-brainer that they have to be in compliance with the final rule.
Yes.
Oh,
And I think we should talk about that compliance, because who figures that out? I mean,
exactly.
you at the end of the day, but I think it's up to them to do the work to show that they're compliant. We can't have your office doing their work in that regard.
Well, will Scott be at every meeting, every single meeting of the subcommittee for compliance? He said he was here for compliance, that's why I'm asking.
Whatever the central committee would prefer,
It's the steering committee, sir.
the
Well-
steering committee would prefer.
Well, Vicky, I mean, between you and Scott, yeah, so the subcommittees are gonna have these proposals. I mean, we should all educate ourselves, we all should be educated to some degree, and we should continue to educate ourselves on that. But, I mean, you guys are,
I think a good suggestion, or at least my suggestion would be, is that the first meeting of the subcommittees, because it's a little bit trying to grasp all of the ins and outs of the American Rescue Plan in one fell swoop, it's gonna be pretty difficult, but I think my suggestion would be, when the subcommittees begin to meet, let's say it's the non-for-profit charitable giving subcommittee, I think that would be an opportunity for Vicki and myself to be present, to be able to go through kind of the bigger areas that can go and kind of the timing. You know, for instance, if we were going to be talking about the infrastructure committee, is paving allowed or not? Is this allowed or not? What's the timing? What's the deadlines happening down the road a little bit, so that we can concentrate more on the committees, that committee itself with the rules that we would think would be more applicable to that particular committee. And then that way, that kind of gives everyone at least the beginning of the funnel to figure out what qualifies for ARP. That doesn't mean it gets approved, it just means it qualifies and it can progress through the committee. I think that's a good way to start the committee sessions.
One of the things Vicki is working on, and
Yes.
I'll let you talk about it, because I think that's
Okay.
important to this discussion.
Okay, I handed this out to all of you. I do not have copies for the public because at this point, it's still draft. It has not gone through final proofreading, and I know I'm going to find something in here. I may have mentioned it at some of the presentations, but for each of the expenditure categories, I'm going through the final rule and I'm listing all of the enumerated uses. Enumerated uses means that it's actually listed in the final rule. For those who came to the presentations or maybe looked at the PowerPoints, there were some boxes that had some of the enumerated uses listed. There was no way for me to put all of them on, one screenshot. And so what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm going to have these handouts here that just list all the enumerated uses that I can see. And some of them are listed in a list, and some are talked about as part of text. So it's not, it's more of a guide than anything.
This is Cliff Notes.
Yes, exactly.
Very
And so I'm working on the one that is most along is the public health. There'll be one for the negative economic impacts, and there'll be one for infrastructure as well. And so that will help, I think. For example, if we say, okay, if somebody asks, well, can we purchase equipment for a COVID testing site? Well, we'll be able to say, yes, it's right here. Paving, I'm going to tell you right now, Attorney McClure, you will not find it as an enumerated use.
I'm not surprised.
Right. Now, the areas that we're going to get into some gray zones here, though, is that there's going to be potentially some projects that won't be listed as an eligible use, but there's still a potential for it to be in compliance. And the final rule, does give us some flexibility to come up with our own enumerated uses beyond those that are enumerated. Eligible uses beyond those that are enumerated, as well as some eligible beneficiaries beyond those which are enumerated. We have to follow a framework that's in the final rule. So, Commissioner Blaney, what you mentioned just now is who's going to make that argument? Who's going to put forth that justification? That, yes, this road project really is in compliance. And did you say that it should be up to the requester, the
Yes.
people proposing it?
Yep.
Okay, very good. And then, do I understand right, then it will be the auditor's office role of sort of auditing that justification. We're going to go in and say, well, we think that this is a stretch, or no, we think this is a good argument. We think, but ultimately it will fall on to first the steering committee so that you will have confidence, or I guess confidence would be the right word. Yes, this is a project that is maybe a little bit iffy, but we think that we can make the argument, and we want to promote this project. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the commissioners and the council. And what if there are some projects that are really iffy?
Well, can we,
And that can be part of how they end up getting prioritized by the subcommittees to come.
can you explain a little bit about the final rules, about the up to $10 million that could be used for
Yes.
pretty much anything?
Yes.
That the
Yes.
government could, that
Any government.
any government use? So
Yes.
then, I guess where I'm going then, if we think that it doesn't fall in here, but it's a project,
There
I mean-
needs to be a government service that we would normally provide, right?
Correct,
So
right.
we can't.
well, paving, I guess I'm just building off the whole
Paving could work.
Paving, right.
Yeah.
paving
Yeah.
I
thing.
just meant there might be some
Right.
other projects.
Well,
that-
and to be clear, this is where things get very complicated. Is paving enumerated? No. If there happened to be a project that otherwise fit, let's say there was a food pantry that needed their driveway paved, is there a way that that might potentially qualify? It might. But can we just go pave Meridian Road? No. That we know.
Correct.
And so when Vicky starts talking about the gray areas, those are if we were doing a stormwater project that crossed a road and that part of the road needed to be repaved as part of that project, yes, that would qualify because it's not a paving, it's part of an overall project that qualifies. But then switching one more gear to become even more complicated, there is this provision that allows us to take that up to $10 million that to some extent can be utilized for government purposes that are not currently enumerated within the American Rescue Plan. So there's multiple levels of confusion. That's why I think, again, if we start those each committee out with a little bit more specific to what they're dealing with, it might be a little bit easier to not create more confusion.
Is everyone clear with that? No, I'm kidding. But no, that is the revenue loss category. And if there is a project that ultimately the county wants to support, but there is not a high comfort level, you can assign it to the revenue loss category, currently up to 10 million. There are some areas that we cannot use revenue loss for. There are some general prohibitions. I don't really see that happening. For example, we can't put this money in a rainy day fund and then use it 10 years down the road. That's prohibited. We can't use it, towards pension costs. With the exception, we can use it for paying for, the perf contribution if we're paying anyway.
What about things that we might not already have paid for as a government body? I know there's been requests for pool projects. Would that be something that could be used out of that money or no? Because that's not something, that's a government purpose.
Oh, okay. I guess we're not, the audience isn't here. Okay, the question is there a project that is not normally a government project?
Would that fit in that money?
My reading is that it needs to be a general government service.
Okay. So it's not $10 million to do whatever we want. It's $10 million to use for any government service.
General government service,
Okay.
yes. I'd like to make a note of that and do some more research on that.
Okay.
There was a discussion at a training that I went to that dealt with, even if the government never had this type of a program before, is it something that normally the government would do?
That makes
You know,
sense.
yeah. But there are some these general restrictions in the revenue loss category, but those are probably not fun.
You know, there may be a point that we should maybe schedule a meeting somewhere in the first month of this in case we have, or maybe right after March 31st, in case projects come in that don't fit any of the committees we have set up, so we can decide where to send them.
Right.
Speaking of who's going to decide when something comes in, is that the commissioners or who's going to handle
For
this?
the most part, people are directing them themselves. They submit it to a certain committee.
Thank you.
But we should probably, I'm sure we'll get something that doesn't seem to fit.
Right, right. And just because it doesn't fit the subcommittee doesn't mean it's not a doable project. It just
Well, that's what
doesn't
I
seem
mean.
to fit.
We need to figure out
Exactly.
where it is set.
So in
How to
that case,
evaluate it. Or
it
maybe
would
we
be-
can we just give her the authority to decide which committee it goes to right now as our, and that makes sense to me, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, she's the first line of, as the auditor, and to just determine whether or not they qualify. So in the process of reviewing them, sending them to the most appropriate subcommittee, I don't think is much of
Okay.
a stretch.
What about this question? What happens if a subcommittee gets a project, they don't recommend it, but you, the steering committee, you think it's a good project? Do you have the right to sort of overrule those subcommittees and add a project back? Or am I putting the cart before the horse? Let's just wait until then. I'm just thinking down the line what might happen. I mean, keep in mind, ultimately, the commissioners are the ones who are going to decide this.
Well, we make the
ultimately.
plan and then.
You make a plan, and then it
Council
goes to the
appropriates.
council for the appropriation. However, the flip side is that the steering committee and the subcommittees are made up of commissioners and council members, so,
We should be all right.
yeah, you should be all right. Okay, so should we keep talking about the general priority considerations? Things that you say, these projects will get priority treatment if they meet these conditions. And so far, we have that, that they comply with the final rule,
Well, here are some things.
to the
we've
best
talked
of
about.
everyone's knowledge. Okay.
We talked about compliance, obviously. Are these one-time expenses? They're not going to lead to additional government expenses with no funding source. Leverage matching funds from other sources to the extent allowed by law. Serve a large number of people in Porter County, and what is the target population served? The agencies and organizations should be located in Porter County, or at least primarily serve Porter County. How do you guys feel about that one? In case there's some, because I know there are several organizations that kind of straddle a few counties.
Or they're part of a larger
Yeah.
national organization.
But they have a presence here in Porter
Okay.
County.
Effective and impactful on the use of ARPA money. Capable to obligate and go under contract with the funds by December 31st, 2024. I think that's very important.
It's actually required.
I was right. It's very important.
That one's important, yeah.
And we need to complete the spending by the deadline of December 31st, 2026. Those last two things are not flexible.
Right, and to clarify, my comment in response is that even though those are required, I think the idea here is that you want projects that can commit to those
Right.
timeframes. In fact, that's going to be one of the questions, right?
Yeah.
Because the problem is that if they can't obligate the funds by the end of 2024, there's going to be an expenditure report that the auditor's office will have to file the following month, and that dollar amount has to show by that date that we have spent all of our money, not spent, but obligated all of our money. If we don't show that, that money goes back to U.S. Treasury.
And let's take a moment to define obligated. If it's a project, any project would have to get all the way to contract let. I mean, if it was a project that required that, that means by that date, the contract's signed and that money's obligated to that contract. So that's a fairly large finish line for some things.
Yes.
Commissioner Blaney, I liked all that. The one question I had was with the leveraging matching funds, do they have to have those funds in their coffers? I mean, we don't want to give an organization a matching grant and then to find out that they are not able to come up with their match by December 31st, 2024, correct? Like, is that a fear or?
I think we're just looking for people to have some skin in the game.
Right.
And to show that they already have support and the ability to move forward. So, and these are for priority, not.
Oh, I like that. I think that's a great idea. But my question is, do they have to have the money now? Or can they say, hey, I want $1 million from you, from ARPA, I'm gonna match $1 million, but I gotta have, it's gonna take me a year to raise that $1 million. But say they don't get that. That's what I was asking.
If they are still raising money by the end of 2024, I think they're not going to be under contract. They're not,
Because it goes into, again, it depends on what the project is. If the underlying project is something that requires architectural or design work, that has to be completed to a point in which it can be bid, to the point in which it can be let by that date. So that's why that timing becomes important. If this fundraising is continuing, then that starts to crunch that timeline. And the reason why I'm sensitive to it is because right now, getting engineering or architectural done quickly is an uphill battle. So those things are going to have to kind of be on a spectrum of, there'll be a large difference between we already have it designed. If a non-for-profit comes in, we want to do an addition, it's already designed, waiting to be bid or under contract. That's going to be much easier to plan for than we need to get it, we need to go find an architect, we need to get it designed, get it done, get it ready for bid and obligated. That's why that timeline, which seems long right now, becomes very condensed in that type of scenario. It's some projects it just won't have much effect on. If it's something that's as basically we're buying X for something, that can happen obviously very quickly. But things that require design is going to be an issue.
May I go back to the prior point of what obligate means? I'm reading it straight from the final rule. Obligation means an order placed for property and services and entering into contracts, subawards, and similar transactions that require payment. So it's my interpretation of that is that there's some kind of written, tangible document that says we are going to pay this money. It is definite. It is, you can't get away from it. So if we don't have that, that's why it's like abbreviated as just a contracted and
No
let.
difference than what we do with encumbering, right? You gotta have a document in hand.
Right,
I don't think we need any more keywords.
right. Some encumbrances, though,
So-
do fizzle out, and they don't
Thanks, Jeremy.
act on.
No,
Okay.
talked about.
So,
Where are we
Anybody
at?
have anything to add?
no, but Commissioner Blamey, I mean, so is this part of things like this that were put together? We're gonna put together some kind of rules and guidelines that are gonna be given to these subcommittees like this? So is this what we're saying, that we agree with these priority considerations? I know there's a few more down here.
Okay,
Take this into, consideration, I guess a step further, how are we, when they use this to consider it and they decide what project to send back to us, what kind of form are we asking them to send it back in? Just, is it a recommendation, a written recommendation? Are they gonna score these projects?
That's a good question. Do you want them to rank their projects? Do you want them to score them? Do you want them to just pick the top 3?
Yeah,
That's a tricky one. What if they only get 3 proposals?
I
What
would
if they only
say
get?
we should rank them just because we have 4 different committees, of 4 different groups of people. If we want to use a rubric or something, we're going to be comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Well, and also, just a thought, I mean, I think the ranking is wonderful coming out of the committees, but I think also there's going to be a little bit of a work in progress in the sense of, depending on what comes out of some of these committees is what's being requested is going to affect other committees. Because at some point, there's a zero, there's a certain sum of money available. And so, it's going to be difficult to say, give us your top 3, because we need to get the committees to meet get the requests after the ones that are just clearly not possible, so we can get an understanding of the universe of requests, because right now, we don't have a good understanding of that dollar amount. I mean, we don't know how much potentially is going to behavioral health and social services, or not-for-profits, or infrastructure, or the county government COVID, and some of those are easier than others to decide, to be able to spend more or less. And so
That's going to be our heavy lifting.
that is, and that's to kind of get an idea. So we just don't know what the requests are yet, or the amount. And we haven't gone the first step of, does it qualify? Or is it close? Or whatever
But-
terminology Vicki
Yes,
was
Matt.
using.
How are they gonna hand them back to us? Is it gonna be, we recommend project 1 and 2, 3 doesn't qualify, or 3, I guess I'm asking to give them direction, when they hear them, public input, and say, and then in June, all right, well, we've gotta send them back to the steering committee. What form, are we just gonna get a phone call and say, yeah, you guys gotta
Oh,
check
no.
out
They're
one?
gonna come-
I know, but,
None of this has really been hashed out, but my thoughts anyway is that whatever documentation the groups or entities give to the subcommittees, that could be put together like in a package for your reading assignment. But you're looking for maybe something that summarizes
I want them to make recommendations at some level
Oh, yeah, we
to
need
score it, to say yes for project 1, maybe for project 2, no for project 3.
I think they need to come here and do the presentation to
Yeah.
this committee.
I
So
agree.
The subcommittee?
when the county government COVID health response is ready, they're gonna come here and give a presentation
On what they
on what they want.
want.
That's towards the end. I think there needs to be an intermediate step after they've met and it's been coned down a little bit to say, okay, there is, and I'll make numbers up, there's 8.6 million of requests in behavioral health, there's, 22 million in nonprofits and employers, there's 30 million in infrastructure, or whatever the numbers are, so that because I think this committee's gonna have to, that's when this committee's gonna have to start to say, okay, this is the universe of requests, because at some point, either this committee or the commissioners and the council at the next level are gonna have to start to decide how much is going to be potentially given to each committee. And they are apples and oranges, so some of these have to progress to see what even the requests are. After the ones that just clearly don't qualify are excluded.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I didn't think about, so the committees will report back to us with their recommendations in person to say, you know, I guess if they want to put it, I would imagine they would have it in writing that, yeah, we strongly recommend project, you know, 1 with a price tag of $5 million, you know, I mean, I'm just throwing a number out, or 1 million or $500,000, you know, we're on the fence on project 2, it's this, and, you know, we think it's good, but we're not,
I agree.
So just to clarify, let's say that the subcommittees come up with their recommendations. You're not going to limit them to a dollar amount. That'll be up to you to potentially pare it down?
When this board makes a presentation to the commissioners, or before that, I mean, we'll have to figure that out when we know.
Yeah, I mean,
Scott said the universe.
we
of
don't know the
requests.
request yet, so it's
Exactly.
it's impossible to answer
Exactly.
the question.
Exactly.
If I go the other way and behavior health and social services, 2.1 million of a universe of requests, nonprofits is 3.8 million in a universe of requests, that starts to change the equation. But we don't know that.
Right.
I mean, so to some extent, they have to meet, go through the cone a little bit, funnel it down, say, okay, things that qualify and are been requested is this much of a price tag. And then this committee is gonna have to start looking at that to figure out, okay, how much is going to where? And until we have those, it's not gonna be possible to say what to do, because we don't know the numbers yet.
And I
So
think Vicki
a lo-
brought it
yeah,
up.
a lot of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're the leader.
Yeah, a lot of this is speculation because the proposals are still coming in. This is just the general discussion, setting the groundwork, and it could change.
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilmember Bozick.
I was just going to ask, and I think you brought it up somewhere in this well-thought-out document. Should these subcommittees be asking these people, will they accept less? So if they're asking for $1 million and we decide to only give them 500,000, will that help them? You know, is that a question that they should be looking into, or that'll come later? That's down the road, or that might never happen. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Good question.
Yeah.
It's a good
Tackle it
question.
later.
that is a good question. I'm just trying to think, because what if,
I mean, some of this stuff we're gonna have to figure out as we go.
Yeah.
And that's another one, depending on the universe of requests. I mean, if we have less total requests than we have dollars, it's not a problem. But if we have $50 million worth of requests, now we really need to ask that question.
Right, exactly.
So we'll
'Cause-
tackle it. Let's find out what
Yeah.
we get first.
Right.
Thank you.
Because conceivably, there could be some projects that they can't do it unless they get that
Right.
dollar amount.
that's where I was going to, if they've got so much money, and to get the project, they need equal amount, and we come back and say, we'll only give you half of that, and they've got no other area to raise that money, then does that kill that project completely?
Okay.
Good question.
I think some of these other considerations for priority are also important. I think we should ask what level, if any, of other COVID-related aid they've received from the government up till now. I think that's important to know.
Now, that's not to say, or is it to say that if they have, let's say I'm just making this up, a small business, and they got the Paycheck Protection Program, or one of the other small business tax credits, is that saying that then they get disqualified from this, or it's just a consideration
No, it's
that
a
you'd be
consideration.
asking?
I think it's consideration. My thought to that, to support it, that question is, if another unit of government comes and asks for $2 million from us, and they got 8, and they spent all their 8 on something else, and they're asking us for 2, but they didn't bring any money to the table for that project, you know, it would be nice to know that, you know.
It's a good question to
Yeah.
ask.
Now, when, are these questions, I'm assuming we're already getting, I know we're already getting asks for money, so these are questions that the subcommittees will ask, or we'll send a letter if we decide to go with them and ask these questions, or how will those questions, how will that question specifically be asked? Did you already get a loan? Or did you already get help from the government?
My thought was that, and tell me if I'm thinking wrong here, because you're the ones who make the decisions and can tell me what to do. I was thinking about on the general priority considerations, putting it together, and if you're ready to vote on this today, it would be posted online, but then I would make sure that the subcommittees get this, that the steering committee, once, these are the general priority considerations, and the steering committee is strongly requesting or demanding or recommending, what kind of word, what authority do you have over the subcommittees? But let's just say you're requesting that they ask the
These are, yeah,
presenters.
these are considerations, priority
Yeah.
considerations.
Right.
So you'll send it to the subcommittee, and then they can just ask the question as they're meeting with people?
Right.
Okay, cool, yeah, thank you.
And if there are requests already turned in, which I don't think there are very many yet, with the deadline being still 3 weeks out, I can have someone in my office contact people and let them know that this is out there now. So they can, put an addendum to their request if they haven't met something here. So the other thing is commitment to adhere to non-discrimination policies, best labor practices, degree to which, and I'm sure this one is important to you, the recipient has had negative audit findings, late tax filings, suspension of nonprofit status, et cetera.
Yes.
That one I'll let you
Yes.
enumerate more clearly.
Yeah. One of the expenditure categories deals with assistance to nonprofits and small businesses. And with this category, and we'll get into more of this as we go forward, but what this category envisions is that the SLFRF allocation could be used to provide direct assistance to help struggling nonprofits and small businesses. The caveat is that they have to demonstrate that they suffered financially. And so as part of that question process, as part of the audit process, I think I'd like to suggest that perhaps the subcommittee look into, how are they in compliance with their reporting requirements? Did the nonprofit ever lose their nonprofit status? If they did, why? Just to ask them, because just to ensure that the assistance is going to, I want to be careful with how I say it, but that it's going to someone who is in compliance with laws and rules.
Because
I mean-
technically, if you gave them to an organization and they screwed it up, we're on the hook for that money?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's important.
So, yes. You said it.
Don't let them screw it up.
So remember, these are considerations, priority
Right.
considerations.
And just if you have a negative audit finding does not mean, that that's the end of the world. But what if the audit finding found that your CEO was convicted of fraud and that you did nothing to change that? I would think that would give some pause before we give some of our federal monies to this.
Absolutely.
And I am absolutely not suggesting that we have any of
Yeah, who
those
are you talking about?
organizations in Porter County, but it's just an accountability measure.
I think all of those additional considerations, to me, make a lot of sense. I would be on board with them, everything that we read off there. It's
All
well
right, well,
thought
I'll
out.
make a motion that we include all of these considerations that we've discussed in a packet that will go to the subcommittees for some guidance.
Yes.
And post it online too
And post it online, absolutely.
for the applicants.
And just, oh, you're in the middle of the motion.
Okay,
I'm
so-
sorry.
Sorry, Scott.
That's all right.
Commissioner Blaney made the motion, seconded
Commissioner Bozak? Or
by
Councilman
Councilmember
Bozak.
Bozak. Okay. All those in
Can I
favor?
have further discussion?
Yes. Further discussion?
I just didn't know what Attorney McClure was gonna say.
I was just gonna be clear that these are just overarching things that this committee wants to look at. It's not necessarily
They're
the
not
only
rules.
ones the committees can review, and
Yeah.
maybe some other ones. These are just the ones this committee's come up with to say, these we believe should be given some priority. There may be more, depending on the committee, because, again, each committee is so radically different of what they're going to be reviewing. So, just to be clear, it's not as if the committees can't have more, or, but these are the ones that are for sure we would like them to take a look at.
Just a question, how does this audit process work for the audit findings and to know if they've had suspension? Vicky, is that something that your office will research beforehand, or these organizations are expected to be upfront with us on that? And are there organizations out there that won't be upfront about it because maybe they've had problems and they're hiding it from us? I'm just asking.
I would think up
I'm not saying there's
front-
any organizations like that, I don't know.
I would think up front. My thought is up front, but if they make it through the process and at the end of the day, we're gonna give somebody a couple $1 million, I think it would be probably pretty incumbent upon us to double check their honesty, before we cut a check for $1 million. And if we find out they're lying, I mean, there's needs a decision there. If we find things that, I absolutely think that if they make it to the end of the process, should check that.
Yeah, okay. But not till then, I got it, that makes sense.
I mean, they've,
No, it makes sense, yeah.
Now, in terms of tax
you'd think they would
returns,
be honest up front, right?
the nonprofit tax returns are available online.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we can look those up. In terms of audit findings for, let's say it's a small business, that might be very hard to come by because many small businesses might not be audited, but that could be part of the question process. Were you ever fined by the government for whatever reason, or, late tax withholdings or something like that?
Thank
But
you.
yes, we'll be able to do that. And I think, Councilmember Rivas, you mentioned maybe giving money to another government entity. Oh, well, all their audits are also online.
Good. I'm sure you already know all the bad government entities in our region. If there are any.
And then how to read the audit findings. Some audit findings are not, most audit findings are not finding fraud or misappropriation. They're,
Don't.
Are we ready to vote?
yes. Thank you.
Careful on that path.
I got on my little bandwagon, I'm sorry. So we had a motion by Commissioner Blaney, seconded by Councilmember Bozick. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed. Okay. So we will get this written up, it will be posted online, and it will be sent to the subcommittees with this recommendation that this is what the steering committee strongly urges that you consider when making your recommendations. Let's move on to some other planning ideas. Let's talk about some technical things. Some of this came up during our presentations, the auditor's office presentations. What if an organization or an entity does not want to submit their proposal through the county's website, but they want to present it in a different way? They just want to email all of you, or they want to wait until the public meeting. What do we say to them?
I think things should be kind of uniform, so there's not a fairness issue. And if they have additional presentation to make, that they can get on the subcommittee's agenda.
Like an elaboration of their proposal. Okay, so we're sticking with the online submission, as that is the county's policy. And if you want a proposal or a comment, obviously, well, no, not a comment, because you're going to allow public comment, but,
These are the proposals we're talking about.
okay, very good. What if a proposal's submitted late? Is it automatically rejected?
What do you guys think?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, you gotta set your line somewhere, and you gotta have a line in the sand. Now, if this proposal, they came up to us and said, hey, I'm gonna be late, and they tell us now, and the reason is, that might be a different story, in my opinion. But if you're just late and asking for forgiveness after the fact, to me, sorry. But that's my opinion. I don't know about the rest of them. Maybe I'm mean.
So how do you put that into a motion?
hard,
I don't know.
I bring this up because there were some questions raised from the audience. How do we know that you received our proposal? There seemed to be some question of, will we be treated fairly? Will we be dealt with fairly? And I think my answer was, we're going to see all proposals, and we're going to, it's submitted online. It's more secure than perhaps just dropping it off. So we want to hear all of the proposals. Everyone is going to be looked at. And that was my sort of pledge or my promise to the people in the audience. So getting to the question of what if somebody is late, it conceivably could happen. We
Maybe they're
see it
waiting.
with late tax bills all the time,
I guess,
and we hear different reasons why.
yeah.
do you hear it beforehand? Well, before they're late or after? Probably after, right? Yeah, I already
Yeah.
screwed up. Not telling you I'm gonna make, I need help.
They don't have to have the complete proposal, I suppose. I mean, so we're giving them a deadline, get as much as possible on that deadline, and then you could build on your proposal and to the committee. So I guess I would agree then, with that being said, is, put something in that proposal by the 31st, and then you could build upon that before you get to the subcommittee.
I like that.
Okay.
So,
And we talked about these proposals, we talked about, did I understand it right, that the steering committee would be reviewing all of these proposals, or just staff, or just me, to make sure that it's in the right subcommittee?
Staff.
Okay,
That
okay,
was you.
okay, very good. Again, these are somewhat in the weeds technical issues, but this is just meant to make sure that we have the process in place, and, to make sure that everyone's treated the same, that we're not giving, on the late issue. I mean, if I was an organization, I'm kind of stepping out here, but if I was an organization, I followed all the rules, and then I found out another one didn't, I followed the rules, so why shouldn't the other people? So I just wanted to
And
keep
she's
it-
referring to this document she put together with a lot of good questions that Vicki really
These
thought
were
out.
some just
Just
thoughts.
things to discuss today as she's bringing up, and she did a very awesome job with this. I just wanted to compliment you.
So, another question that came up at the meeting, we had someone who suggested that they would have multiple proposals. So, do they submit just one proposal, or do they do they combine it all in one? And I believe that my answer during the meeting was, I really didn't know how to answer this, but I said that I would give it to the steering committee. I said that if it's clear that it's all I think I said, if it's definitely related to different topics and it's going to different committees, submit it to different committees. But what about a multifaceted proposal, but it deals with different parts that maybe could stand alone? Should they just submit one and let the subcommittee digest it or dissect it if need be? Or should there be multiple?
Wouldn't it be more on them, how they want the committee to look at it? Do they want the committee to look at a $5 million project or five $1 million projects?
Okay.
That's my thought, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they can figure that out,
Okay,
unless it's different, clearly different arenas.
Yeah.
okay, so one proposal, and then let the subcommittee. Okay. And then I think we.
Unless they would rather us view it separately.
Okay.
Then it's, yeah, let them.
Yeah, let them decide.
I would suggest letting the requester decide how they would prefer to present their requests to the subcommittees.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Okay,
That's what I said.
okay, very good. And I think we talked about who's responsible for defending why or why not they think it's in compliance. And it's the requester, right? It's not that the subcommittee will have to take apart the proposal and say that this is why we think it's in compliance. it's up to the requester to kind of defend their justification. Okay. Or to justify their proposal. Okay, very good. Now, there is one thing that we really didn't talk about, and this is potentially in the weeds. It may not be relevant at all, but under the final rule, that if a project consists of a capital expenditure in excess of $1 million, there has to be a written justification prepared. And it has to follow a very specific format. And I think that the auditor's office would be putting that final document together because it does have to follow a certain format. But I was going to ask the steering committee if it would be recommended that if there is a capital expenditure, that we pose the questions to the requester. And they, one of the questions is, why is this a project more suitable than an alternative? One of which would be a do-nothing alternative. So let's say we have, I don't know, someone's proposing, I don't want to make up a thing because someone's proposing a outdoor patio on their restaurant, and that is and it's going to exceed $1 million. Well, they would have to explain why that is better than some of the other alternatives. Now, we could put the final written justification together, but they would need to explain their rationale. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't that be our job? I mean, we're the ones sorting through all these proposals and deciding which ones we want to fund. So, I mean, wouldn't that fall back on us? I mean, rather than that, they don't even know what other proposals are coming.
Yeah, is that, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant that the capital expenditure, why is this particular expenditure, why do you need to make this expenditure instead of another alternative? One of which is, do nothing. It's tied to just that one project. It's not pitting this against another capital expenditure.
Okay. Well, I mean, they would have to do it, right?
Okay. So if I could come up with some questions that they would be expected to answer when they're giving the presentation. That's what I'm asking, if it could be assumed that that would be part of the part
Is
of their
this going
proposal.
to somehow weigh into how we rank things? Or is this just paperwork at the end when we're done?
That's a good question.
Because if it's just something that needs to happen after we've made our decisions, then
Right.
I think we should just wait.
Just wait on
Yeah.
that, okay. Okay.
Yeah, see if we have any.
Yeah, and there may not be any. I don't know.
I have no idea, yeah. Just
Right,
see if you have any then.
Okay, and let's see, I think that those were most of the questions that I had. Did I leave any out? We did agree that before we assign these proposals to the subcommittees, we would review them and make sure that they're in the right committee. What about the ones, I think Attorney McClure, you mentioned, what if the ones we think are clearly not in compliance? Like a new road? Does that even get forwarded to the subcommittee?
What?
No.
A new road?
If it clearly doesn't comply, then no.
And at that point, so it's stopped by you, I assume, as the lady overlooking all these?
Is that what,
I'm asking, that I assume would be
Right.
you. So would you at that point at least notify them that, hey, you're out of the process? Or, I mean, did they get a letter, hey, this does not match ARPA's guidelines, we're not gonna do this?
We should do
So,
that.
something to tell them that they're out of the
Okay.
running?
I agree.
okay. Now, what if they say, well, I disagree with that?
Then they can maybe
So does Scott.
appeal to this board,
Appeal to the steering committee?
yeah.
Okay.
Because then we have you and Scott on the steering
Should probably
committee.
tentatively schedule a meeting for the first week in April, so we all have it on our calendars. 'Cause that's right after all the projects have been turned in, if there's any of that kind of stuff to deal
Okay.
with.
Should that meeting be right after all the steering committees meet for the first time and they go over the parameters, so if there's any questions back also from that?
Yes.
There was some discussion before about having a joint meeting, the steering committee with all the subcommittees, or at least as many people who could attend.
That'd be a lot, I don't know.
That might be messy.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's pretty unwieldy.
Seems
Okay.
like
Yeah,
it now.
that's a great word
okay,
for it.
that's, okay. But you would like to schedule a steering committee meeting for the first week in March, or
Well,
April, I'm sorry.
After all the other committees meet. When they schedule their first meeting, then we can look at their calendar and schedule a meeting after that,
After they meet. for
after
the
they
first
meet
time.
for the first time.
Okay. Do I understand it correctly that subcommittees are expected to sort of go through, I guess, me, for setting their meetings, posting notices, getting notices out to the media?
Yep,
Okay,
and that's why we want you to get some clerical support for this.
okay.
Is that, what you're talking about, like, they're gonna have their meetings in here, right? I assume?
Yeah.
We're gonna ask them to. So someone will be here to turn, are you going to all these meetings?
Well, I actually had planned to go to as many as possible
Okay.
before I was so honored to be given this position. But I say as possible because I didn't know what,
They haven't set
how
their
many
meetings yet,
subcommittees
yeah.
would meet. But I did want to go to all of them to the extent I could, just to hear what was being proposed and what the considerations were.
Well, and I think that's the thing, that's, we gotta make sure that somebody's here that knows how to work the cameras and make sure that, so it's on YouTube the next morning. You know, we definitely, because I know some of those meetings I won't be able to make because, things are going on. But
Okay.
I'm definitely gonna wanna watch them and recap from them. We need to make sure we use the right security camera, not the security camera, because it's got really bad volume. The other camera's got better volume. So I don't know, I'm just bringing that up because we telling the public it's gonna be out there, we gotta make sure we do that.
So
I don't know.
it'll be basically my job to make sure it's posted, get the media out. Commissioners, you would have your person posted online?
Absolutely.
Because I don't
Yep,
do that.
yep,
I mean,
yep.
I can do it on my
No,
page,
just
but
get
not.
him the information and he'll get it
I just
out.
wanted to make sure that the subcommittees are really subcommittees of the steering committee, and they are to work through the process that you're setting up here now. Okay, very good. Now, those were most
Have
of
a
the
good night, Andy.
questions that I have. Okay, so I'm sure there'll be other questions that come up as we go along, but I feel like we kind of cleaned up or clarified some things that I had going because I didn't really know where you were standing on some of this, what your thoughts were.
So you'll put everything together now, you'll give them kind of some general rules that we went through and send it to all the subcommittees, and also, I mean, it would emphasize the timelines, because, I mean, getting people together is never an easy thing, so, but I think we need to emphasize the timeline to them that they need to get to work.
Yeah.
I mean, the deadline's March 31st. Once that deadline arrives, we need to get them, you need to get each committee the proper, requests that you believe fall within, the directive that they're supposed to be looking at, and then tell them that they need to start scheduling meetings soon, and the first one is gonna be kind of an educational meeting with you and Scott. But their timeline is April and May.
There is one other thing, can I just kind of jump in and kind of take off the chair hat and put on almost solely the auditor's hat? Under the timetable, we're looking at the timetable, well, we're looking at that the steering committee will fine-tune the recommendations to present to the commissioners and the council, and the expectation is the commissioners and the council would be approving this in August. August really kicks off the annual budget process.
Which I think the timing works perfect. I mean, if there's anything that
Exactly.
blends, that's why
That's one of the reasons we put it.
yeah.
Okay, good, well, thank you. My concern was that if we're going to have this kind of at the same time as the budget hearings, that could potentially raise.
No, I think that this timeline is important. That's
Okay.
why, I mean, the subcommittees need to meet in April and May. They need to get their work done. June, they need to prepare it and report to us in July, and we need to get this to the commissioners and the council in August as we kick off budget season.
Right, because budget season, for those who don't know, tends to span, well, the work in our office actually begins in July, but that's largely doing some of the basic budget workshops with the state and some of the budget preparation, but that's when we find out our levy growth quotient, and we start getting the idea of just how difficult the budget season's going to be. And, yeah, and then it goes over through September and October, and we have some very strict deadlines in terms of publishing the amounts and finalizing the budgets, so it's a good timetable to more or less wrap this up before it gets underway, the budget hearing process. Very good.
Can you think of anything that we need to talk about?
Nope.
You guys?
No, I'm good. This is a good thing. I think that we all have our work cut out for us over the next couple of months, so we
Okay.
gotta keep going.
I'm just glad we started out with the meeting getting $100,000 back. That's what I heard.
There you go.
Do we want to put anything on the books now, or just wait?
For your steering committee meeting, I would recommend getting it down now.
Well, again, I just think that until if our intention is to meet after all the subcommittees meet, we don't know.
Oh,
Well, we should have those populated by March 21st, right? So that's your meeting. So maybe if we did the first full week in April, or the second, what do you think?
I mean, if we tell the subcommittees, I guess they need to meet within the
And it-
first 2 weeks,
You give them
or
two-
first week, I don't.
The dilemma is if we don't set one today, the closer we get, the more difficult they are to set. But whatever we set, we might be ahead of one or behind one, but I think we need to set one just to have it on the books so that we are able to meet in that, maybe the end of the second week of April, or maybe
Pretty flexible first or second week, whatever you guys need.
maybe
Except the 13th. I'm not
April
good.
14th.
Sounds good to me.
it's the day before Good Friday.
Only Thursday.
So if the council is,
Then we're telling the subcommittees that they have to meet prior to the 14th.
okay,
I got the first 2 weeks of April to,
and actually, they could even meet the last week of March if they want to.
Well, why don't we put something on the schedule for, like you said, the 14th?
14th,
14th?
5 p.m. or? I like
Does that
5.
work
I
for
don't know
you?
if that works for you guys.
Yeah.
So April 14th at 5 PM. Now, there is one technical issue. We have to double check that this meeting room is available.
I know a commissioner.
I will be surprised if it's not available.
Okay, yes. Very good. Now, the next item that we had on the agenda was to establish the joint meeting, but that has already been discarded as not necessary, or not, not going to happen. The next thing that I put on the agenda is something probably abstract, external resources. Tony, could you go to, it's one of the slides. Keep going, keep going. There we go, up ahead. From time to time, my thought was to maybe bring in some outside resources for you. And this is a site on the NACO.org.
I've been following it.
Yes, there's so much there. And this is one of the
Need to log in.
county examples that you go to where you can, I don't know if you can see it, filter by topic. So you can look at different topics, economic development, environment, equity, whatever. You can pick by county size, you can pick by the state. I'll tell you right now, if you pick by Indiana, there are only 2 counties
Vicky,
listed.
Can you tell them what NACO is? Because I heard some people saying it.
Okay, NACO is National Association of Counties, and it's NACO.org, NACO.org.
Thank you.
And they have an extraordinary amount of resources on the American Rescue Plan Act. And if you find this particular page, you can get an idea of the various plans from a variety of counties. Now, as a warning, some go into just the basics, like we're using it for premium pay and assistance to households. Others go into a lot of detail. It's just an interesting look at what some other counties are doing. This is not a government agency, so we're not mandated to submit our proposals. So this is the proposals that either have been voluntarily submitted or that NACO has found. There's another site on NACO's site called the County Tracker, and that one actually includes some of the large cities, and those go into some other details. So I just, from time to time, maybe share some resources with you, if there's time permitting. If there's not time permitting, then I won't. But I do suggest
add that
looking at NACO.
To your packet that you passed on to
Okay.
the subcommittees.
Okay, very good.
And
Okay.
just because other counties are doing it, though, doesn't mean it's right. So,
Exactly. Or some of these plans were proposed before the final rule, because I started looking at this before the final rule. And I saw one county, I'm not going to mention which, that had a proposal that in the final rule says is strictly prohibited. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but
Tell us, we want to follow that one.
I know that they do. I'm going to follow it. I want to see, it's a very, very large county, so.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I personally had something that comes up in July. I'm on vacation for 2 weeks, and I just realized you guys mentioned earlier in the meeting that we might be having some major meetings in July, so there's second and third week, I am not here. I'll be down in Florida. I just wanted to bring that up now. I know, Jeremy, get vacation once a year, right? The rest is for Christmas.
Okay,
So I just wanted to bring that up, so you guys weren't surprised last minute.
okay.
We'll figure it out.
So
I didn't want to screw you over,
maybe
that's it.
meetings
No, I
in
appreciate it.
July,
No, I mean,
or, I'm sorry, the first week. You said it's the 11th and the 18th, or the last week.
Yeah, we're gone for 2 weeks. We're driving there. Who knows what fuel prices would be like? I might never come back.
we got a new council member, we can replace you with him.
He's a young guy, too.
Okay.
all right.
So are there any other comments from the committee? Anything that further to be discussed, or?
Do you want to offer public input?
Oh, yeah.
I just was asking if any of you. So now that concluded what we sort of wanted to hash out. Are there any comments from the floor?
Gentlemen,
Okay, yes. Now, we just set the rule. We're asking you to say your name and your general residence. We're not asking for your home.
but you need to be by a mic, right?
It
We-
would be best.
Because people are going to be listening to this.
Okay, now there's another thing we didn't talk about.
They have to be able to hear.
What
it.
about the portable microphone
You can use that if you want.
Only as,
over there?
Joyce set one up over there.
only as good as its battery. 15 years in audio visuals teaches you that real fast.
Ooh.
Gary Brown, Isaac Walton, president, but really, this is fascinating, you guys organizing all this. I just had an idea while you were saying all this, to protect yourselves, and in all the committees, somebody might submit 50 pages of stuff. You don't want to put all that on your website, do you? You want to have a page of succinct, cognitive something, so if the public looks it up, there's dollars and cents, zip, 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 bullet points. You have to have at least a one-page summary, so that when you do your committee meetings, you have any Robert's Rules of Order, your old business and your new business. Is there anybody that has to comment from our last committee meeting that was already in the public domain on the website that comments on old business? Seeing none, yeah, then you go to the new business to declutter, and protect yourselves, because there might be somebody that knows that those people cheated the Pop Warner League and they took PTO money and Chester, you know what I'm saying? That protects you, and then you're telling the public, and it allows you to the next meeting for them to bring up something that you might not have known. But then you said, we put it out there. So at least it's put out there between your next subcommittee. You know what I'm saying? And I really appreciate you guys are going to pre-sort, and then you're pre-sorting for the commissioners and the council. Because I run my meetings that way. I said, if you didn't bring it up to me before the meeting, and now you want a whole discussion at the meeting, you have to do that in the subcommittee before you bring it, to pre-sort, before you bring it to the main monthly meeting. Yeah, just to protect you. And who knows, some weird thing might come up. I mean, we just had our audit, Isaac Walton, and we have to do that, and it has to be approved by the national, okay? But a lot of small 501c3s, who knows how often they audit? You brought that up. Yeah. And you might get some weird thing that pops up saying, why are they asking for money? They were in charge of some other stupid organization and it failed. Because you don't want to get caught in that whirlwind. That's all. Just to protect everybody. That's what I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yes. Yes.
So my name is Haley Scott. I'm from Chesterton, and this might not, I don't know if this is on the radar or you guys haven't decided or thought about yet, but when you talk about timelines, is there a funding timeline of when funds will be dispersed? Are you considering like a reimbursement or advance type of funding? But those are just my two.
Okay. Now, should we, point of order here, if we have questions, can we respond, or do you want to take all public comments and then
Yeah,
discuss?
respond at the end.
And then respond at the end? Okay. Because I can respond to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
I'm Ruth Vance from Valparaiso. I just, listening, to all of you on your procedure, I'm wondering if each subcommittee might create a form. And I'm saying, I know you'd like them all to be uniform forms, but each subcommittee may have different considerations they want to make. But something that at least the subcommittee uses, for each proposal, there'd be like a cover sheet form that we've gone through this, and yes, it complies with the statute. I know you're going to look at that, but we might get into the weeds and say, I don't know if it really complies or whatever, and in the ranking and justification, like maybe a couple paragraphs on why we think you should fund this, why it's ranked this high or this low or whatever. And it might help you if you had kind of a uniform cover report on each proposal. Just an idea.
Thank you. And anyone else? Okay, I thought I saw your hand up. Okay.
You can talk if you want there. No, you gotta talk in the microphone. There's a microphone behind you, I was saying. I'm sorry. But you probably have to turn it on. You might have to flip it.
Testing.
Oh, you're good.
I'm Walt Bredinger. Very simple questions. I've had two organizations ask me specifically, are the applications now available on the website? And what is the actual deadline? I know there's been talk about it, but I just wanted clarified where the applications are and when they're due. Thank you.
I can answer that when we get to it.
Okay, great. And anyone else?
Do you want to answer the?
Yes, and while we're doing that, Tony, can you get to the website so we could show the applications? It'll take a while to get there. If there are no other comments or questions from the floor? One of the questions dealt with how's the money going to be dispersed? I think it dealt with if you're a subrecipient. And you mentioned reimbursement or advances. I'm sorry?
I said, no, that's just the old
Right. With subrecipients, which would be considered entities that are actually carrying out a project on the county's behalf, we know there has to be a written agreement between the county and the entity. This is different from a direct assistance, but this is as if we're saying that, yes, we like this one program and we want you, this nonprofit or whatever, to carry it out. And we're working on that written agreement, but tentatively, this is how it's going to be. That how the money is going to get to the entity is going to sort of depend on the project. What we would prefer is to be direct invoiced. So let's say the subrecipient wants to purchase a whole slew of PPE, and they purchase it, and then they get billed. They would submit the accounts payable voucher directly to the auditor's office. We would see the supporting documentation, and we would pay it on their behalf, similar to the way that we pay claims for county departments. That may not work in some cases. Let's say a subrecipient is going to hire someone new. Well, we might want to advance the monies because that person's not going to be on our payroll. But that subrecipient has to get us the payroll documentation within that quarter. So it's going to be sort of dependent on the project. Okay, very good. And then another question, it was more like 2 comments about the checklist and a cover sheet. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I like that. The danger might be that we're missing something in the proposal, but if it's a checklist more from the standpoint of the subcommittee that, yes, it meets this, it's in compliance, it's, we asked about other federal grant funding.
That's something we should put together
Yeah.
and bring it to the next meeting.
Yeah, do we make this part of the application process? The general priority considerations are a list of
I don't
questions
think
and
that should be
answers.
on the application.
But I mean,
Those
that-
are considerations. They'll be available.
Right, but the committees are gonna be sitting there asking them verbally, other than that. Otherwise, get the person asking for the money for that same questions, right? I mean, otherwise, how else are we gonna find out these answers? They're gonna be asked verbally. So might as well get them on a list of paper. Or they might not get asked at all, and then we're not getting what we want done anyway.
What do you think?
I think we might be talking about 2 different things. Are we talking about the broad overarching guidance this committee is handing down to the subcommittees on things that should take some process, take some priority as far as consideration? Or are we talking about a checklist coming out of the subcommittees that are summarizing what they have sent up to this committee?
I don't see it being different. Same thing.
I think they're radically different. One is whether or not your community, your non-for-profits in the community, whether or not you have any skin in the game, things like that, whether or not you have audited statements, but that's only part of that picture.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're the same thing, but I'm saying it could be the same document. Why not? Why not ask these questions and have them fill out a sheet rather than asking them verbally? And then, I mean, otherwise, what's the point of these general considerations? I really thought that was what we were gonna do, is find out, is there a commitment to adhere to non-discrimination practices, stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, like in the written agreement that we talked about, both parties would have to sign. Would you want this to be written out so that the requester signs it, that yes, I agree with doing it? Because some of this may not apply to.
Right, yeah. It doesn't knock them out, but that's what I'm saying. Why not just ask them up front?
I think that these are, we're sending these to the subcommittees. We're gonna put them online too. These subcommittees, I guess, if I'm sitting on a subcommittee, I'm definitely gonna look at their application, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll look at their application to see, because these are considerations I should be, I'm considering while I'm looking at the application, what are they fitting in my mind as I go down, I think what the young lady was referring to then is, maybe when I'm done and we agree, project 1 is, I really like it, then maybe I think it's a summary. This is then kind of what I was asking for earlier. How do they present it back? And I know that they're going to do it in person, but maybe a cover letter that says project 1 is a really good project. They're asking for $1 million. They're matching it with $1 million. It's going to help these people. I don't know, just a brief summary. Is that? I don't know.
Like a one-page summary. Amount requested, what the description of the project,
Yeah, high-level description.
We're gonna meet again in April. We've already set something for, I mean, these things aren't coming out of subcommittee until the end of May.
No, we got a
I mean,
couple
we
months.
can
yeah.
see,
Yeah.
kind of see how. things
How
are
about if we
going.
put together some different, we put together different formats and see what you like.
Yeah, I think just, yeah. I mean, I guess a
Yeah.
uniform document that's,
Yeah.
being sent to us with the
Yep.
projects.
Right, right.
Just a quick
Because
summary.
we're putting the projects on our auditor website, and we're putting like a brief description. That's just the 4 projects that,
Oh,
We have
you already have them up there?
yeah, yes.
Didn't see that.
Not a lot, it hasn't been built yet. Again, just the premium pay has had some activity.
Okay,
Okay.
and then do we have it?
There
We're
was,
gonna show you where the applications
Yes.
are on the website.
and then you
And
can
then,
talk then.
as far as the deadline goes, that's also, should be listed on the website. If it's not prominent enough, I will make sure we get that changed. Or perhaps our web guy was waiting for us to confirm that tonight. So the deadline is March 31st. Yeah, okay. So everything, there's a ton of information on the website. And if somebody can't find it, they should call our office and we can help you find it.
So, okay, so this one is the behavioral health and social services. So, there's the deadline. So you click on the link, and then there's a form, and it asks you to fill out what type of agency you are. And, various other questions. Tell us about the services, anything else you wish to tell us. How much funding are you seeking? So this, in my mind, this is just the basic beginning of their proposals. Is there a way to upload documents?
Yeah, there should be an ability to have attachments. We did talk to Kurt about that. Looks like he didn't get to it yet, though.
Okay, okay.
Well, and also the way Mr. Ellis does his web programming, it may be not available until you start filling in other parts of that
Yeah.
application, and then all of a sudden it becomes available. The drop-down box hits, so, but either way, it will accept attachments by tomorrow.
Okay, so what Tony's doing is she's filling out.
Did
like
that help you or no?
I'll tell them to keep looking.
Okay. If not, they can call the county and they will help you, walk you through it. I'm sure Vicky's office could help too.
So you just,
It's-
it's on the main page, there's a big yellow box here. Just click on that, and then you can just, once that pops up, you've got submit, right here is submit funding
And
proposal.
when was this posted?
Porterco.org.
At what date? Because,
It's been up for a little bit now.
Yeah.
pardon me?
It's been up for at least a week.
Okay. Okay, because it was about a week ago, she said she's been through it over and over and over again. I kept saying, the application must be on the website. But it was a week ago that was when,
I'm
thanks.
guessing, but, yeah. Tell her to look again.
I think it was right around the time when the committees were, after February 22nd, sometime around there. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, things changed because of the February 22nd decisions, the momentous day. Okay, if that is all of the comments and questions and discussion, unless there's something else from the committee, I think we can adjourn this meeting.
Did we get all the questions? We didn't forget anything?
Oh,
We're at our website, can we find all the projects? It's not
Do you have other questions?
No, that's
Okay.
the only one I'll ask today. Thank you.
Okay, so the projects are due March 31st. And I believe the decision by the commissioners was that they would be posted within 3 days?
I don't remember the timing, but it's
I-
within a week.
I think it's in here somewhere. They're not going to be posted until they're all in.
I thought you mentioned that they were on your website, that's why I think she's asking.
Oh,
Didn't you mention that the proposals were on the website already?
Yeah, you did.
You had uploaded a few of them already? That's, I think, what she was asking, where to see those.
oh, the ones that are already been approved. I'm sorry.
No.
She's
No?
talking about.
That's what you, okay, yeah.
She's talking about the 4 that have been through
Yeah.
the commissioners and the council, the money's appropriated, the premium pay, the
Yeah,
trail.
That makes more sense. I misunderstood that too, thank you.
okay.
So the stuff that still needs to be considered will all be posted within the week after March 31st.
Whitney did.
Does that answer your question?
And then the ones that have already been approved, we're starting to build the status report
And
on
that is
the
on-
tracking. Because we're
That's
starting
on
to
your
track it.
website.
Yes,
That's
that's
on
on
the auditor's
ours.
page,
Yeah.
the 4 that are already approved.
And there's not a whole lot happening there because there haven't been many expenditures yet, except in premium pay, but we're getting there. Okay,
I think you've done a wonderful job tonight.
well, I
Madam
think,
Chairwoman?
Chairwoman, yeah.
well, I think you all have done a great job as well because you had to make some decisions and we don't have all the answers yet. We don't even have all the questions.
We're just, yes, exactly. We're just starting.
We're just starting, but this was kind of trashing out the process very organically.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Make a
well,
motion
thank
to
you,
adjourn?
everyone. Yes, a motion to